Those of you who do not know what Stat Media Group is, please pick up of this copy. It's available. So this is the main publication by Stat Media Group. This is predominantly covers only air freight. We are a 37-year-old publication specifically on transport logistic. Besides this, we have two more other publications, one for the Indian Sub-Continent covering all modes of transport, and one for the African continent called Logistic Update Africa, covering all modes of transport. I think it is what they call is the graveyard shift, but I can see people who are actually having their lunch, coffee, can turn their attention to the stage here, and I don't think there is anyone in this audience without a smart device or a mobile. You're all using smart devices. If you have a coffee in your hand, think about the electronic device that's being used to give you that coffee. There are semiconductor chips being used. So you're using multiple digital smart devices which has got semiconductor. And if you want to know how the supply chain for electronic devices take place and what is the importance of air freight logistic, it is important that you take a seat in this audience. Without any delay, I would like to invite on stage my esteemed panel members. First, Latha Narayan, Director Commercial APAC, Australasia and Indian Sub-Continent for Etihad Cargo. Thanks, Latha, for being with us. Next, I would like to invite Jaisey Yip. She is the Vice President Cargo Business Division for Changi Airport Group. Jaisey, welcome. I'm so honored to have Catherine Su. She is the CEO of Singapore and Malaysia Cluster for DB Schenker. Catherine, welcome. Okay, that's the powerful panel that we have on stage, and what we are discussing is about building a resilient and reliable air freight supply chain for high-tech commodities. As I said, there is no one in this hall who do not have a smart devices. Probably you would be holding multiple smart devices. How do those devices reach you in terms of upstream and downstream supply chains, the materials used to produce that, once it is produced, being shipped to different parts of the world for consumers to use, and we are talking about supply chain. We are also sitting in a city, a country, Singapore, which is actually an important gateway for a lot of air freight and sea freight cargo movement, known for its efficiency as well as the cargo handling cargo movement from South Asia. Even before the pandemic, we had seen a small shift to Southeast Asian countries or to Asian countries as part of what they call is you call it China plus one or China plus two strategy. But it all happened much before that, before COVID. What companies, organizations were looking for is de-risking of supply chains and diversification of production. There are so many other factors that is leading to that. We have heard about nearshoring, now it's called friendshoring. There is regionalization that happens. There is something called patriotic capitalism. The friends of same ideology coming together, creating manufacturing centers around close to where the consumers are. So I think these are some of the topics that we will discuss, and the idea is the frequency at which disruptions happens in the world, whether it is the social, economic, financial, it is far too frequent now. But we have managed to find solutions to each one of them. And I think the building a resilient supply chain is very important. I'll stop here. I would want each one of my panel members to briefly talk about what is that your organization doing to build a resilient, reliable supply chain for your customers as well as for the world. I start with Latha.
Thank you, Reji. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm afraid this is the graveyard session, so we would certainly encourage a lot of questions. We want to make sure that we make it as interactive as possible. To Reji's question on what are organizations around the world doing, and in particular airlines, we've got to understand what changed during the pandemic. So as far as airlines were concerned, there were two factors that really changed. One was capacity, and the other was manpower. And I'll come to both in a second. So what happened with capacity? So during pandemic, we obviously had, as Reji said, cargo and cabin aircrafts. We also had a lot of payload because there were no passengers. And as the process of normalization started, in my opinion, everybody was waiting and watching to see how airlines are doing this. And have we actually arrived at that point where we can completely say we are back to the pre-COVID days? Unfortunately, not just yet from a wide-body capacity point of view. And the reason I say this is thanks to some statistics that the Rotate team that we work with, and I can see Lars out there, so thank you, Lars, and Ryan. We were working with them on a workshop yesterday. We just looked at what is the kind of wide-body capacity that has come back. And worldwide, we are down still 8%, right? That is year on year. And 1.6% if you then compare that with the pre-COVID level. So we are nearly there. Not completely, but we are nearly there. If you then break it down, drill down a bit further and look at what is the Asia element of it, you'll see Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, and Indian Subcontinent pretty much year on year is positive, double-digit numbers. But if you then look at the versus pre-COVID sector, Southeast Asia is down 10%. Northeast Asia is about 0.6% plus, and Indian subcontinent is minus 4%. So clearly, capacity is one of the things that we wanted to put back as much as we possibly could. What have we done in Southeast Asia? We have plowed back a lot of the capacity. It's double daily flights into every country in Southeast Asia from an Etihad point of view. We also have freighters flying in. Vietnam is a very big segment of our business, and we did not stop flying into Vietnam even during the COVID days. From a manpower point of view as well, this year, we've got 1,575 new hires. We obviously had to man up. There was a lot of redundancy that happened. That was the result of COVID. And if we want to keep those planes flying, then we obviously have to make sure that there is a robust operational setup there. So those, in my opinion, Reji, are the two large factors that we've worked on, which will help us just soar our planes back in the air again.
Okay, one quick follow-up question on what is for the Southeast Asian countries, what is the network that you have in terms of passenger as well as the freighter network?
So we fly into pretty much everywhere: Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. Vietnam, we discontinued Saigon recently, but we are with 5 we had out of Hanoi, down to 4. Singapore is daily, and I believe with Jaisey, there's ongoing discussions. We are still awaiting the second slot. That's the only country in Southeast Asia where we have daily flights. We want to make it double daily, but Jaisey has to agree.
Jaisey, you have the business right. You can actually close the deal right now. Jaisey, again, on the same question, I also had a chance to look at your September traffic numbers as well as the July-September quarterly numbers and your 5 key air freight markets from out of Changi. And one significant data point that I picked is the 21% increase in cargo throughput coming from India. What are some of the things that Changi Airport Group is doing in order to build that reliable, resilient supply chain for your key customers?
Right, I would say that it's not just about semiconductors, right? So for all the commodity types that come through air freight, I think especially what we learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, we have actually identified 5 key attributes, right, in order for us to handle effectively some of this special cargo. So the first one is speed, right? I think speed is crucial, especially for air cargo. So I think as airport, right, I think our key role is to actually work very closely with airline partners, right, to actually anchor critical connectivity. Then particularly, I think for semiconductors, as we all know, most of us here, we actually convey very heavy and odd-sized capital equipment. So what this means is that we need to work with freighter operators to anchor the main deck capacity, right, on some of these critical trade lanes. The second that is very important is security, right? As we all know, air cargo, we handle moderate to high value cargo. So security at the airport environment is paramount, right? And security is not just the responsibility of the airlines or the CTO, but it takes multi-parties to actually work together to ensure that the warehouse is secured, right? And also the airside is of high security as well. The third one, increasingly very important, the third S is sustainability. Right. I think a lot of global shippers, they are committing to net zero targets, right? And as part of it, right, there is imperative for them to also reduce the carbon emission of scope 3, right? So scope 3 comprises of like upstream and downstream transportation and logistics. So there are pressure, right, on logistics partners like ourselves to actually help them to reduce the carbon impact of scope 3. And increasingly, they're also looking to us, to provide them with sustainable transportation solutions, and also asking us whether we have sustainable technologies that are being used at the airport. The other 2 attributes, just I quickly mention it, right? So one of it is visibility, right? So visibility is going to be very important, and especially so after the COVID pandemic, where in order to build a supply chain resiliency, any visibility is critical. I think in recent years, most of you might have heard that airports are investing into air cargo community system, right? So do Changi Airport. So in 2020, we actually rolled out the Changi Air Cargo Community System. And one of the key use case that right now we are preparing to implement it community-wide is the truck dot slot booking. I think in other airports, it's known as a slot management system, right? Maybe to some of you, it's like, okay, what is truck dot slot booking? Isn't it another appointment system, right? But think about it. If we actually implement this use case effectively in the airport environment, what it means is that when your truck arrives at the airport, it has an assigned dock, right? And there are ready ground handling resources that is waiting to serve, right, for speedy cargo lodgement as well as collection, right? What this means is you also give visibility to logistics companies like yourself, right, on when the truck actually arrives at the airport, right, when is the first cargo received, for instance, and when the truck depart. So last but not least, I think the last attribute that is very important, right, is reliability, right? How do we actually work collectively as an air cargo hub to ensure that, every cargo is handled properly, right? Especially those temperature sensitive and those odd-sized cargo that requires a very special kind of handling.
Jaisey, can you recollect any specific growth numbers in terms of your high-tech cargo commodities, whether it is semiconductors or other smart devices? Any figure in terms of approximately what is the kind of jump that you have seen?
I don't have the numbers offhand, but for the Singapore air cargo industry, right, I would say that the semiconductor sector is a linchpin, right, to our air cargo industry. So Singapore itself today, right, I think we hold about 5% global share in terms of global wafer capacity. So there is a lot of chips that are being transported in and out of Singapore. In terms of semicon equipment, the capital equipment, right, we have about 19% market share, right? So that is where all the odd size and big size cargo are, right? So I do believe that most of the logistics partners here, you have developed capabilities in handling some of these commodities.
Yeah, if you look at the Dutch company ASML, which actually produces the biggest chip-making machine, which is like as large as a truck, which runs into about $300 million US dollars. That's the cost of it. And practically 100% of that actually goes on main deck freighters. So that's an important market segment as diversification of production happens to different parts of the world, Southeast Asia, these machines to move. Of course, there is a geopolitics, there is trade sanctions because of which the certain machines by ASML is not allowed to be exported to or to be sold in certain countries. So there are restrictions on what they call is the deep ultraviolet DUVs and the extreme ultraviolet machines that are actually produced by ASML. So there is huge potential in terms of not just about nano chips being produced, also the machines that actually produces or makes those chips. These are like oversized, big cargo commodities, cargo equipment that actually moves around. Catherine, I happened to talk to Ashok Kumar a few months back, who is the head of air freight for DB Schenker. And during the pandemic, we have seen how DB Schenker actually kind of elevated the number of long-term contracts with air freight capacity, flying around cargo commodities of different types and sizes all around the world. Of course, the markets have kind of softened right now. The demand is on the decline. But you are responsible for the DB Schenker cluster for Malaysia and Singapore. There are specific government initiatives by Singapore and Malaysia to kind of enhance the electronic semiconductor manufacturing. Where do you see the potential for DB Schenker, and where do you see air freight stepping in to take advantage of such closer manufacturing of these high-tech devices?
So I think very much like echo Latha and Jaisey, during the pandemic time, we have activated more than 80 charter flights. If you look at that, the semiconductor industry in Singapore is heavily invested. You will see that in the media recently, Lam Research expanded in Malaysia, Global Foundries, Applied Material, Siltronics, all these. These are all billions of dollars investment. We are very fortunate that we are participating in all the different area of the supply chain of the semiconductor. We're very heavily the strong partner for a precision machine productions in Singapore, which 50% of the production actually come from Singapore. And we are the partner from start to production till the finished goods. And we're also the strong partner for the chips manufacturer in Singapore. And then after that, the electronics devices that coming out, which a lot of us have, sometimes maybe even have more than one, especially in a family. And also at the same time move into the cloud computing, where the AI and all the photos and all these are being stored. So we see the whole chain of effect that happened. And I think the most important that we have seen during the pandemic is we have prepared very well in the digitalization. So before that, we have already moved to a lot of the wireless devices. I still see during the time when we struggle with the COVID, some of the companies still checking about the VPN connections. Can the people work from home? What if, they when we have a circuit breaker, then they're not allowed to go to the office and so on. I think we are well prepared in advance. So we just on that day, plug and play, go home and start to work from there already. So our business didn't interrupt. And being in Singapore, a lot of the company use Singapore as a regional distribution center. So not just the domestic demand, but also feeding into the worldwide demand. So during the pandemic time, we have a lot of closures for airport. So suddenly the cargoes can come to Singapore, but for example, if we need to go to Australia airport closed, or China airport closed. So we need to be extremely agile to look for alternative. So we change a lot of the multi-modal from air freight to land transportation. We go through the road transportations to China all the way or vice versa. So I think agility was the one that really helped us to bring a lot of the solutions to the market, especially during the COVID time, and we continue to do that. Today, we still operate a lot of the charter flight, for a lot of the customer. And I see that at this moment in time, maybe the industry at this has a little bit of the breather to reset the base. But I'm looking forward to next year when a lot of those with the new capacity coming out, with the new fab going live, end of next year, beginning of 2025, the capacity will be going up very drastically. And like you said, these cargoes need to go on main deck. So it really go into Latha's discussions about to have the wide body. A lot of those have not been able to cater for the main deck capacity. And this is also to really need to work with the machine manufacturer in order to adjust the size of the equipment so that we will have more opportunity to go on the different type of aircraft in order to uplift. So at this moment in time, I think the limited capacity has not been able to go in tandem with the company that are investing in Singapore and Malaysia. So this will be something that we need to continue to look for alternative, whether we need to go via different airport or whether we need to go to different type of solutions in order to continue to uplift. Otherwise, we will have a negative spiral.
Thanks. I like to keep the discussion as interactive as possible. So if you have any specific question on the topics that's been discussed, please raise your hand. Come and ask you a question, make it really brief. In between our asking questions, I will provide some tidbits of information. So I think the recent announcement back in India where Apple actually produced its iPhone 15, Tata Group, which owns the Air India after the government gave up the ownership of it. They purchased the contract manufacturer for Apple, Winston. So I'm saying that there is a lot of development that happens within this region. The possibilities for air freight is really high. Let me get each one of you, particularly Catherine and Latha, in terms of what is your customer asking for, particularly from the high-tech industry. I know air freight is about speed, reliability, and cost. Cost is an important factor. What else are they asking you when it comes to shippers, freight forwarders from the high-tech manufacturers, high-tech industry? I know DB Schenker could be your shipper, but there could be also a TSMC or ASML also could be your customer. What are they demanding?
So I'll go first. What we've seen, and I'm talking about the recent months, the biggest request is flexibility in schedule. And the reason I say that is because of the commodity we're talking about. We're talking about semiconductors. And the volatility in production just means that their schedules are erratic. Now, what does that mean for us as an airline? Clearly, whether it's DB Schenker, whether it's the customers you work for or we work for, they then want the airline to be as flexible. But we have a perishable commodity, unfortunately, and we are not able to be as flexible as we need to. So that's one very important one. The second really big one is the ability to ramp up capacity quite quickly into countries. And one of the examples I can give you is Penang. And I think, Catherine, you touched on it quite well, which is the ramp up in Malaysia we've seen. Now, Penang is an upcoming superstar market for semiconductors. How quickly can an airline actually fly in? And how much, let's say, even break-even type of operation can we do? It's a tough one. It's a tough one for us to manage. And the third and very important point that customers want from us now is to be competitive. So please make sure you give all of the qualities that Catherine touched upon. You touched upon it, Jaisey, the transparency, investment in technology, really flexible schedules, main deck capacity, but all of them needs to be at a very competitive price. The question is, can we do it all the time? No. We will obviously have to be cherry picking because we just need to keep those freighters alive. We need to keep those bottom lines, not even make profits, but break even. So from an airline point of view, that is a challenge. Places like Singapore, you talked about a lot of ramp up of capacity. Do we have enough main deck capacity? No. And one of the reasons would be just costs. Just for us to be able to break even our costs, we then need to be able to say to our customers, here is an extra 5 freighters per week, go for it. No, we're not able to do that.
Turn on the capacity, it's not very easy. When you have a big asset like a 777 freighter, it's not very easy. But Out of the 10 times, you said sometime it is possible. Out of the 10 times, how many times is it possible?
I'd say 3 out of 10, it is possible. I would like to say 5 on 10.
Okay.
I've got a gentleman here who will probably tell me, who will rattle off all the costs and say, well, these are the different reasons why it's just financially not viable to do it.
Okay.
But that's not the case always. As we ramp up, as an airline, as we ramp up our own capacity, then we need to fly to places. And clearly, these will be on top of the list.
Thanks. Catherine.
Yeah, this is very interesting, yeah, because if you ask me what my customer is asking for, I can give you one example. One of my customers' motto is make possible. They will ask me, Catherine, can you build a bridge from here to there? Make
it possible.
Make possible. And I consider, and Latha said, okay, not always, so like we are the ones stuck in the middle to say that, okay, how to make possible. That's why I said that we need to be very agile. We need to have all the information, all the possibility to look at different options to make it possible. Because ultimately, there's $1 million investment further down the downstream. They have machine that is waiting to produce the chips. They have chips that will need to go to a certain customers and so on. I think that during the time when we have the Changi situation, one of the customers come to me and say, I'm lying down tomorrow if I don't get the chips to come out from the airport today. Yeah, so this is how tight it will be. And that is the case when we have these situations. Airline will be looking for commercially viable. Customer will be looking at make possible. How are we going to bridge that in the middle? Everybody at the moment, yeah, is in their own area, yeah, in terms of sharing information. So in those cases, this is the area for us to really looking at what are the informations, the visibility that we know. For example, like we have multiple customers that will have going to a certain destination. And that is the case to work with the different airlines to really say, what will be the case to make it viable? And to this one, national carriers, in this case, come into the picture. Especially for example, Samsung. Yeah, if we need to go to Korea, national carriers some of the time will take precedence to take care of some of their national products, yeah, other than the other country. And that will be the case to make the supply chain even more political and then also at the same time more challenging. So yeah, it will be a fun time.
Flexibility, agility, I think these are keywords for air freight, but it's not always possible to be flexible enough to advance the customers. I fully understand. Jaisey, you said about air cargo communities, deployment of digital tools, deployment of technology to give you greater access to the visibility. We have come across several instances of cargo lying in airports. I'm sure that that's not the case in Changi. You have a much better enhanced processes in place to evacuate the cargo. Airports are not meant to be hotels where people come and stay. You need to come and then get out. I think the same case applies to cargo as well. I know some of the airports are really making the terminal so beautiful that people do not want to step out of the airport. That's a different discussion altogether. Tell us about you're a custodian of an airport working with the different stakeholders. You don't have a direct connect with probably the end customer, end shipper. How are you making, what are your customers bringing that message from the end shipper? What are they looking for?
That's a very good question. I think recently, right, our team has been asking ourselves, I think from the airport perspective, right, who actually are our real customers? I think conventionally and traditionally, right, airlines are the customers, right, because they bring the capacity in, right, they land at the airport, and then we collect a fee from airlines. But if you talk about from the cargo, we realize that airlines are just the supply side of the house. Right. In fact, the other key stakeholders are actually the freight forwarders and the logistics partners, right? Because they are the ones, right? They come out with transportation solutions, right? They decide, how to package the solutions for global shippers and where to channel these shipments. Is it via Singapore or is it via somewhere else? So we realized that, the freight forwarders actually are very important customers for the airports as well. So what we have decided to do at the start of this year, right, is to form a team, right, that get in touch and to engage the freight forwarders, just like how we have been engaging our airline customers, right. So we want to grow alongside with the freight forwarders, right, as they expand their business in Singapore. I think at the same time, through regular dialogues, we also come to know, like, what are the challenges that they face at the airport, right? And as they transport more increasingly challenging kind of shipments, for example, like biopharmaceuticals or some of these expensive chips, right? So what are some of the new capabilities that the airport and the community must come together to build, right? So this is a new competency that Changi Airport is trying to build at the same time. Thirdly, another key customer group that is very important is actually to be able to talk to the shippers directly, right? Because the shippers will then tell you actually what are their overall transportation and supply chain challenges, right? So I think slowly and progressively, we want to be plugged in, right, into the shippers community. So what we have done, I think on the biopharma side of the house, I think Reji, you are quite familiar. I think back in 2016, Changi Airport, I think alongside with Brussels Airport, we founded this association called Pharma.Aero, right? So Pharma.Aero is an international organization where we invite pharma shippers, the freight forwarders, the airlines, the airports to come together, right, to discuss about air pharma logistics and the challenges. And it's a very project-based organization where we come together, right, to curate projects that actually help to better air transportation of pharmaceuticals. Now, so I think biopharma and Pharma.Aero is a success, and we hope to actually replicate this, right, to other important verticals such as electronics and semiconductor as well. Right. So this is another area that we are looking at. How can we get closer to shippers, talk to them directly, and work together as a team?
Think about some of the mega trends. If there is higher demand for smart devices because of work from home, a lot of companies are actually bringing people back to office. But I think they would have multiple devices that they can work from home, from office. So I think the demand for electronic smart devices is on the rise. And it said it's going to be the semiconductor industry by 2030 is going to be several trillions of dollars. Work from home, that's one mega trend which is accelerating the demand for electronic gadgets, which has most of the electronic gadgets today have chips in it. We see artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and other large language models being deployed to various processes to enhance work processes. Then you see the entire electrification of or the mobility, a lot of electric cars. Look at, I think, the number of chips that would be in the car that you drive. It's probably as many as the one that you would probably find in a Boeing 777-8F. So many chips inside. So these are the three key mega trends which is actually accelerating the demand for semiconductor, high-tech goods. And I think that's where the opportunity lies for air freight industry and for players like each one of you. Okay, the question from...
Hi, I'm Poonam Chawla here from Air Cargo Update. And my question is for Jaisey. You know, the semiconductor industry is subject to various international trade and export regulations. You know, compliance with export controls and import restrictions, they can be challenging, particularly when we are talking about shipping across borders. So how do you handle this challenge in a very time-effective manner?
So your questions is about trade protectionism and...
My question is about trade and export regulations, especially, you know, for the semiconductor industry, and also compliance with the export control and import restrictions.
Okay, in my opinion, right, if you look at the semiconductor industry, right, it's a very globalized industry, right? I think, in my opinion, I don't think any single country itself, right, in a very short period of time can actually develop its own ecosystem of semiconductors. So I think for a long period of time, right, it's still going to be a global kind of a commodity. Look at today, the supply chain of semiconductors, right? It starts from maybe design in the US, right, then all the way to wafer production in North Asia. Then you have your testing and assembly in Southeast Asia. Then it ends up in maybe in other parts of Southeast Asia or even in China, right, for the final product. Kind of manufacturing. So recently I read an article that it says that, you know, a particular chip will have to go through had to cross 70 borders, right, in order to reach the final consumer hand, right? So I would say that, I mean, even there is a lot of talk about, trade protectionism, right, and sanctions and things like that, I do believe that for the semiconductor, right, it's still going to be a global kind of industry, right, for many years to come. Just there's no single company and no single country is able for, as I mentioned, as a very short period of time, manage to develop its own ecosystem, right? I think for Southeast Asia, there is potential in Southeast Asia. Today, Southeast Asia itself is already an integral part of the global semiconductors and electronics supply chain, right? So we see an ecosystem of front-end manufacturing. I think what Catherine has mentioned, I think in Singapore, even in recent years, we continue to receive foreign direct investments for wafer manufacturing, as well as some equipment production as well. And then Malaysia is quite a major player in terms of packaging, testing, as well as assembly. Other parts of ASEAN countries like Vietnam and Thailand, they are becoming a very important producer of consumer electronics like your phones and laptops, and Thailand as an automotive hub, right? So with all this investment, I do believe that Southeast Asia will continue to be a major conduit in terms of semiconductor trades.
In fact, if you look at the trade sanctions tariff wars that happened 2017, let's be very honest, truth be told, you can have China plus 1, China plus 12. China still maintains a large portion of a lot of manufacturing. It is just not possible for these or other locations to overnight create that capacity for electronic manufacturing or any other consumer goods manufacturing. It's just not possible. It will take time for other countries to really catch up. So China will continue to play a significant role as more and more passenger flights begin to fly to North America or Trans-Pacific from China and from US to China, you will find a lot of belly capacity coming back. So that's a fact of the matter. So under certain restrictions, Dutch government was not allowed, or ASML, the Dutch company, was not allowed to sell what they call is the EUV, ultraviolet, extremely ultraviolet machines which manufacture 2 nanometer nanochips, which is actually driving a lot of AI products. Restrictions is going to be a part of our life. Probably we'll have to find solutions around that. On that note, let me come back to Latha on digital transformation. One of the things that has been discussed is how does technology enable that greater visibility of your assets, of your capacity? How does that allow you to maximize your assets and optimize the capacity that you have, so that, of course, there will be, it's not everything possible, there would be delay, but you can reduce that delay in terms of you have better control towers, which allows you what is the capacity that is available. Then as a result, you are able to make quicker decisions to convince, to satisfy your customers.
Okay, so Etihad's partnered with Dinata Cargo and I believe Speed Cargo. Yeah. It's pretty much at the proof of concept. We are doing a pilot in Singapore, and the concept we're working on is using AI to maximize capacity. How would you maximize capacity using the tools you have? It includes warehouse, it includes in our own systems, how does the capacity reflect? And eventually, when you identify it, how do you actually channelize it and put it all together onto the plane? Work in progress, but that's something that we are working on. So far, so good. And
I've seen yesterday, I've seen that, how it functions.
If you've seen the warehouse, the Dinata warehouse, we've just recently done that. There's other work that we are on. There's another project we're doing, trying to understand in real time how exactly can we produce that transparency during the journey. A lot of the customers want this real time because they don't want to do a post-mortem of an event. They want to do that real time. Can we get this now? And how can we do it? So clearly, milestones have to be set. You've got to work with various stakeholders. And the stakeholders are across the journey of the shipment. That's work under progress. I don't believe we are allowed to talk about it just yet, but we certainly have a proof of concept that is working. So we're all very excited looking towards that. Because what the customers want is not to be able to go back. So for example, if you ask Catherine, she doesn't want to go back to her shipper and say, well, I got this information from Etihad 2 hours after the incident actually happened. What Catherine wants is to be able to say 1 hour before that, before a deviation in temperature or a deviation in shock, humidity, talk about any of the variables, we want to be able to know if we can then predict it in advance, and then what can the stakeholders within those milestones do to act upon that deviation. So we're working on it. We'll let you know as we progress. Again, from a semiconductor perspective, there's a lot of demand that's coming up now saying we want temperature-controlled commodities, right? The journey's got to be temperature-controlled. We're getting more like 18 to 19. It goes up to nearly 26, 27. So not like the 15 to 25 of the pharma that you would normally see. So as an airline, what can we do? We can try and pull the trigger on the 15 to 25 journey that we would normally have for pharma. But this one's got to be more complex than that. Now, can we do all of this? Well, we can. It means that each of the airlines look at investing in technology. And one of the requests we would have as a fraternity is to see, can we work together, as a centralized platform and be able to provide some of this technology. I hope we can do it someday, but that's certainly a plea to the fraternity.
Yeah, this is the C word, collaboration and community building. I'm not really fully convinced about this. I keep talking about it. I think this is something that industry players have to really improve in terms of collaboration and community. I want to connect what Latha said to what Catherine said a little while earlier in your first comment about information sharing and what Jaisey said about the cargo community. When I look at, there are islands of excellence in terms of when you look at the digital transformation that happens. Etihad Airways, Changi Airport, DB Schenker, as a standalone entity, it has the best information system. You have everything. The problem lies where cargo moves from A to Z with 24 touch points. What is that point where the right information, the right kind of information is shared, passed with all kinds of security around? How do we build that trust among different stakeholders using the technology? Think about, you're using the most advanced aircraft in the world. Yep. And you're carrying the nano chips which are capable of doing billions of processes in a second. And at the same time, these are cargo commodities lying maybe in the airport. A stakeholder doesn't even know where my cargo is. It's not that as a shipper, I wouldn't like to get real-time update. But do I have an access information if I need? I think that's more important. Comments on this, Catherine?
I think a lot of companies, a lot of countries have tried. Yeah. So, for example, Singapore has also tried with different organizations to try to make sure information are shared. The case is still very fragmented. Shippers are using multiple airlines, so information on multiple freight forwarders. So in terms of to have information on one platform is not the most easiest. And even though internally, like for example, we have the very sophisticated integrated logistic and air freight terminal in Singapore. So the information is directly translated between the logistic and the air freight so that we can push out as late as possible the launching time to the airport. And like you say, this is an island of excellence. And this excellence we want to share with the airline, with the shipper. And some of the time, everybody is looking at the commercial benefit to really say, okay, if the airline knows that that's heavily in demand, then Latha may say, okay, then the price may go up a little bit. Yeah. So everybody is trying to hold the card to the chest first. Yeah. And shippers also the same. Yeah. in some of the cases, I give you an example. During the COVID time, we have a charter air flight, which was already paid by the shipper to go to China. But because we are also handling the equipment, so we know that this equipment is not ready. So we need to push out the charter flight. So you can imagine, if the company is not doing the upstream and the downstream, the charter flight will be there idle, and then we will spend additional money without knowing. So there's a lot of broken silos at this moment in time. I think internally, if there's a good collaboration, trustworthy partners, then this is the case to really need to form strategic partnership, not just to really looking at the ultimate dollars and cents. Of course, that is important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where your integrators like DHL, UPS, FedEx score higher because they control everything from A to Z. Let's be also honest. A lot of disruption that happens in the world is also by the e-commerce players. I've seen Amazon already, it's almost like running an airline. They have posted job openings for selling their capacity. They know that they have a huge number of aircraft with them. So they don't have enough of demand to fill their planes. So they basically going to operate. So there is challenge coming from outside. As I said in the beginning, the destiny of air freight industry is not actually designed and created by our own people, but it's probably a challenge from outside. Any questions from the audience?
My question is for Latha. Latha, you have mentioned you have certain AI, powered products which you have launched. And I think these are launched in collaboration with Speed Cargo Technologies. Can you highlight a bit more about these products, specifically about Amplify, Cargo Eye, and Assemble?
You're talking about the pilot we're running currently?
Absolutely. Can you highlight more about these specific products, which is your Amplify product, Cargo Eye, and the Assemble?
Yeah, so we haven't publicly launched it around the world. So this is a pilot at the moment that is going on in Singapore, and it involves working very closely with the ground handler. It involves working with the airline. So it starts from the booking stage to, so at the point the booking's made and the customer's got certain dimensions that come in, the question is, how well does that actually fit into the cargo plan? And what we are used to as a cargo fraternity now is very manual planning. We've had experts in each office who are, that person is the expert who does fantastic cargo planning. That has changed because we're using a machine to now plan it for us. And what does that mean? When the cargo then comes in, the dimensions have got to get captured, then it goes through the Denata terminal, and that again is powered by AI, as in, at the cargo warehouse as well. It doesn't just go through like that, because they've also got to implement a lot of processes to make sure that what was the earlier manual plan versus the current plan, can that go through, and can they certify it fit and safe to travel? So that's what we've put in place. What we've seen as an immediate, shall I say, action point is a few customers, like say a Schenker or an Aramex or someone, where we now have a few names to say, Latha and team, can you go and talk to these customers? Because we are seeing a lot of discrepancy in terms of the dimensions that have actually come in, and this needs to stop. Repeatedly in the last 3 flights, for example. So that action gets taken, then their teams are alerted. So it's a lot of collaborative working, and I believe for an airline what it does, and for the forwarder as well as for you, from an airport perspective, it just optimizes that very scarce resource we have, which is capacity. And we're all in it together. So
how much do you feel that we can optimize the capacity by the implementation of this product?
How much?
By the percentage, a rough idea if you can give us.
12% is a number based on the benefits we have derived from Singapore. I don't believe we can give you like a value to it.
That's absolutely fine, since it's a pilot project. But thank you very much for this.
Yeah, having seen this yesterday, and I'm not being paid by Etihad or Speed Cargo to do a promotion, I've been like following speed cargo ever since they stopped. I think it's been 4 years. I've seen by myself what Latha said about this is a perishable commodity. The asset, the capacity. If it is not used, it is gone. Yep. So if every inch is important, then there is a way to make a business case there. There is a way to make money there. Why do you want to waste that small space there where you can fill in a box? Think about an era where earlier used to be one or two airway build that fills the aircraft. Today it's multiple airway builds. Look at the general cargo that comes out of e-commerce channels. You can really, if you have an automated system to really optimize your capacity, that's where it makes a difference. And I think it actually connects the entire thing to revenue optimization, capacity optimization. And I think Etihad sitting in their control tower in Abu Dhabi can actually see real time, and they can plan their load accordingly. So I think the last question to the panel members, Jaisey, I want to ask you in terms of the potential benefits for Changi Airport. You have several billions of investment coming in the new Terminal 5. Cargo is an important component to that. Several millions of cargo will be handled in early 2030s by when it comes. And then you see the potential benefits from the semiconductor high-tech industry in and around the Southeast Asian countries, 650 million people. What is your closing remarks in terms of Changi Airport's benefits in this particular region, keeping in mind some of these tailwinds?
I think I will address your questions right from the regional lens as well as the vertical and commodities lens. I mean, earlier on I mentioned that we are very positive about the long-term prospect of Southeast Asia. I think today in itself, right, Southeast Asia is already a huge production region as well as a huge consumption market, right? And as the economies progress, right, I am a true believer that air cargo, we have a very relevant role to play. We will continue to be a trade and economic catalyst, right, of the region here. Then from the commodity perspective, I mean, if you look at the type of commodities that air cargo convey, right, these are your time-sensitive, your high-value and temperature-sensitive cargo, like your biopharmaceuticals. We talk about semiconductor, capital equipment, aerospace, right? All this, right, will continue to grow. These are the verticals that will continue to grow, and especially in Southeast Asia region, right? We spoke about the potential of semiconductors here. In terms of biopharma, right, we continue to have received investments in vaccines production and other biopharma products. And earlier on, you talked about India, right? I do believe that India is going to be even a much bigger pharmaceutical producer that is going to export to the world, including Southeast Asia region as well, right? So all these point towards the potential of ASEAN as a region, and air cargo has a relevant role to play. So the investment that we are putting in, right, is really enabling us, right, to take our Singapore air cargo hub to the next level.
And more slots for Etihad cargo coming up.
Exactly.
Yay.
Okay. Latha, I don't know whether you have an approximate number in terms of how much of high-tech semiconductor cargo goes into from these regions, or generally, or all over the world in your network. Do you have any senses, and is there any kind of growth figures? And not specific. Is that something that you've been looking at it?
That's a very good question. So one of the challenges that we face in being able to track and report it is because it all gets booked as general cargo. And therefore, you want to then try and segregate it. We do have some efforts in place now to try and designate it as a product. And therefore, we will then give it a 3-letter code. We can then try and track it. But I'd like to say that it's anywhere between 40 to 50% of the overall number. The reason the rest is not included in this chunk is because e-commerce obviously has boomed so much, and therefore there is a substantial number sitting within that general cargo portfolio as e-commerce. But high-tech still is anywhere between 40 to 50% for us.
Okay. Catherine, I think customs plays a huge role in the movement of cargo, and particularly when it comes to semiconductor, high-tech goods moving from one country to another country, passing through several other regulatory regimens. Where do you see, again, the point of that's how do you connect that silos through APIs? API is a very important buzzword now. You don't need to change your legacy system, but then you have technology today that can plug in to allow different stakeholders to share. Where do you see the customs playing an important role, since you deal with both Malaysia and Singapore?
API is one of the technology. I think there are a lot of different type of technologies, so long as there's the willingness to share. Like for example, like crossing the border between Singapore and Malaysia, you're facing two different custom regime. So at this moment in time, there's a lot of the green zone, the green lane that is being discussed between the Singapore and the Malaysian government. And at this moment in time, in Malaysia, there's still very much state dependent. Whether there will be the Johor stay or whether there will be a Penang stay. And there's not so much uniform and digitalized. So there's still a long way for things to be digitalized before they can share. Because if they have not been digitalized, still on paper, then you can't even share, no matter whether you use API or whatever the technology. And I think overall, with overall, like just now when you asked about the semiconductor, this is going to be a very important vertical, especially in Singapore and Malaysia, I would say, in view of the recent investment, because these investments are talking about billions and billions of dollars. We talk about the pharmaceutical, we talk about the others, but as far as air cargo is concerned, these ones we are talking about heavy machinery. These are, every shipments are in tons and tons. They're not in kilogram. She'll know very well because she's the procurement. She'll buy the product and things like that. And these are the ones that is continue to be willing because of time sensitivity to go on air freight. Rather than to go on ocean and the others. So we really need to pay a very special attention to the semiconductor, to the high-tech industry, which continue to use these terminals, Singapore, Malaysia, related, and to able to uplift them, in a very speedy manner. So I think this is a thing. Probably previously we look at a lot of those is electronics when we're talking about still computers and things like that. But now these machineries are extremely expensive. Sometimes we even transport the raw material, the ingot and things like that. And all these will require a very special handling from our cargo terminal, from our airline partner to pay special attentions in order to uplift. So I think, this will be really the future over here. And I'm very bullish on that.
I've been asking questions now. Any one of you want to say something that to the audience? No questions, if there is something that you want to say.
I think there's one thing to connect with the collaborations. We're also working with SETS in order to bring forward the inspections, the X-ray, because a lot of time, Jaisey mentioned about the queuing system, and because of increasing capacity, when it go into the airport has not been able to expand and the volume expand. So the queuing, we need to come forward, to one step forward to the forwarder area. And this will be the things where we need to do more collaboration in a community in order to lighten the congestions and then also to be able to give our customers a more speedy service.
Latha?
Okay, I want to say a cheeky one to the audience. It's not really advised to put cheap and quality. They don't go hand in hand. That's all. I'm sure you understand what I say.
I think we have been all pampered by the e-commerce companies, which are like a lot of them are actually heavily PE funded. So the reality is slowly setting in. If you want a premium service, then pay for it. If you want a 3-hour delivery, then please pay for it. You can't get it free. And if you're a champion of somebody who says that sustainability is your aim, then I think you got to take care of solutions that are within your control. Don't think about, 2050 is the set target by the UN. That's something, but I think individually you can do a lot when it comes to sustainability. I think with that note, it's time to end this conversation. As I complete 10 years covering transport and logistic, interacting on stage, off stage, covering transportation logistic today, I couldn't have asked for a better panel to moderate. And put your hands together also for Latha completes 10 years. She has completed last month 10 years with Etihad Cargo. So I'd like to thank Latha, Jaisey, and Catherine for being part of this discussion. And a big round of applause to everyone in the audience. Thank you so much.